Like many of us, Joanne had a dream, and Joanne's dream was to write for a living actually, and to eventually become a published writer. So she started off by embarking upon a rather mainstream avenue. She sailed through academia as a young girl, and after she graduated at the age of 21, she worked as a full-time researcher for a charity that she still supports now actually. But her heart still very much remained in writing. One day, whilst she was on a delayed train journey, Joanne had an idea. All of a sudden, it was almost like a light bulb moment actually, and in her mind, the main character of her first novel had been born, and Joanne decided to name him Harry. Now she knew straight away that Harry was something quite special and that she owed it to him to bring him to life. So she started writing about him and his story, and she actually became a little bit obsessed with his personality and his characteristics, but it's something that she got an immense pleasure out of. A short while later, Joanne's mother passed away at a rather young age actually, and understandably Joanne became overcome with grief. So to try and overcome this grief, she decided to move to Portugal, where she taught English, fell in love and got married. Unfortunately, she had a divorce 2 years later, and her very young daughter at the time were forced to move back to Scotland to rebuild a brand new life for themselves. So Joanne was now a struggling single parent, a struggling writer. She was actually unemployed, she was living off benefits, and her daughter had a rather poor quality of life, but Joanne was still adamant in completing the story that she had so very enthusiastically started. 7 years after she initially started the process of writing about Harry, Joanne finally finished her very first novel, and then she faced the even bigger challenge of getting this novel published. Expectedly, because she was a first-time author, a number of publishing companies rejected her, until a small publishing company called Bloomsbury eventually agreed to publish her first book. And this was only because the director's 8-year-old daughter fell in love with the first chapter of the story. So the company insisted that Joanne change her pen name to attract more male readers. So Joanne became J.K. Rowling, and her first book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, as I'm sure most of you already know, completely took off and became the fastest selling book ever. And J.K. Rowling has never looked back since. So a rather inspirational story about J.K. Rowling, and actually one of my favourite stories, because J.K. Rowling for me is an author, as a parent, as a figure in general, is someone who I really admire. And I appreciate that I've given you a summary of her life rather quickly. But imagine for a moment if I had read to you a list that contained the top facts of J.K. Rowling. If I just read it to you now, would you have remembered those facts just as well? Probably not. And this is because there is no better way of presenting information than through storytelling. Storytelling is the most powerful communication tool because stories make us think, stories make us feel, they stick in our minds. They help us remember ideas and concepts in a way that numbers, texts on a slide, graphs and charts simply are not able to. And if we take a look at businesses, so consumers of a business, they're probably not so concerned about a business's marketing goals. They do, however, really enjoy a good story. So again, if we look at J.K. Rowling as an example, her first book was written for children, but she now attracts readers of all ages. Why? Because all of her books contain a really powerful story. So in the same way, if a business is able to tell their own story through their own advertising content, then they immediately have an advantage over everybody else. Think about your own Facebook posts for your business, or your social media posts, or perhaps the description you have of your company on your website, or the blogs that you like to publish. Are you simply recycling information, or are you using storytelling to shape that information and give it meaning so that you're providing your audience with something that they can actually resonate with. Now, I know I've said this several times, but regardless of your industry, regardless of your brand, try your best to avoid corporate jargon. Instead, tell a story, write a story with simplicity, write it with emotion, write it with drive. There's actually a very famous quote that says, "Those who tell stories rule the world." Go with it. It's a really good point. If you're able to capture the authenticity of your company and your individuality, you'll find that your followers, your brand awareness will just naturally come. If you would like any further help in creating engaging content, effective content, content that evokes emotion, then please feel free to give me, Neely, a quick call or send me a message, and I would be more than happy to help you.